The 90s. They were. It was a decade. It was a decade. In terms of G.I. Joe, though, they're often banished to the island of misfit toys. Now, I'm not going to try and change your mind on this. Well, actually, yeah, I am. I'm going to give it the old college try. They're overlooked, though with the neon, I'm not sure how you can miss them. Yes, the colors are a bit in your face, and the gimmicks were increasing, with color changing, squirt gimmicks, Play-Doh at one point. You know, it was getting pretty out there. However, they were a product of their time, and for this kid, born in the 80s and raised in the 90s, they were the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas, the duck's nuts, if you will. And recently, I did a video changing the colors on a Dr. Mindbender version 2 to prove to at least myself that the colors were the problem with the Joes and not the designs. Because to me, some of the designs of these characters are outstanding. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I do have a preference for the real world military looks. So I think some of those costumes are iconic, they're indisputable. But I also won't lie to you and say that I don't love the sort of out there wackiness of the 90s Joes. Because that's what I grew up with. That was G.I. Joe to me. You know, I was aware and had some of the older G.I. Joes. I've mentioned it before. You know, I have an older brother who had some, and, you know, some neighborhood kids down the, quote, down the street had some. But what was new on the peg was bright neon colors and weird designs like Leatherneck with draft pants. But that was Leatherneck for me. Now, with the colors, I feel that some people are too blinded by the highlighter yellows and the greens and the bright pinks to find the kind of diamonds in that range. Because there are some real world military looks. General Flag, he was my first G.I. Joe that was purchased for me by my father. That was my first personal G.I. Joe. That's a very military look if I've ever seen one. And then there's Topside, who really, I mean, yeah, he has a highlighter orange vest, but it's a life vest. That makes sense for it to be that orange. Otherwise, that's, you know, a blue color and, you know, gray pants. Looks pretty military to me. Then there's Cutter version 2, who, other than the orange life vest, again, which makes sense, his pants are a little weird. It's an odd choice to be doing battle in those, but it's a military look. And then there's Updraft, you know, one of my personal favorites. The look's a little weird, but the colors are there, so is it the colors of the design with him? Bullhorn looks pretty military to me. The other thing that the 90s Joes graced us with was Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat figures. Yes, I know, it's a bit of a joke now, but at the time, Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat, not officially G.I. Joe, were a force to be reckoned with. Extremely popular video games, newly minted home ports, they were gaining in popularity. Now, I was very young in the early 90s, but I do remember my brother and his friends playing Street Fighter 2, playing Mortal Kombat 2 at home, like all the time. Anytime a new Mortal Kombat came out, they went and rented it from Blockbuster. I remember the handful of occasions when we would go to an arcade, that's what my brother would play. On top of that, they were having movies being made. They were huge. So while it seems wacky now, like, oh, Street Fighter, why would you pick Street Fighter? From a business standpoint, the shift to bring the Joe name association was a means to try and save a line, which was, at that point, it was failing. Struggling to keep up with the likes of Street Sharks, SWAT Cats, Ninja Turtles, whatever anthropomorphic characters you can think of. But to someone like me, who never even stood a chance against an older brother when it came to playing those games, those figures were an outlet for me to play with the characters I saw on the screen and stand a fighting chance to not lose against myself. I was able to play with them the way the video game was played that I couldn't do. You know, I couldn't pull off all the special moves. My brother could, I couldn't. But with the figures, it gave me a chance to do that. Speaking of being a kid, not to alarm anybody, but I was a kid at one point. I don't know if I've mentioned that. I was one of those who, if I stared too long at my weapons, they disappeared.
What? What the
So the 90s Joes came absolutely packed with weapons. So many weapons. And it was a godsend. So now instead of all my G.I. Joes having to share one shotgun, they could share two. Not even mentioning all the Leonard core figures I had, who also came with a litany of weapons, who also had real world military looks. That's a whole topic for another video. And Ninja Force and the Shadow Ninjas? A sprue full of swords? Are you freaking kidding me? That was the best. Were they thumb busters? Yeah, sometimes. But so were half of the weapons that came with G.I. Joes. Zap anyone? You ever try to put a bazooka in his hand? I'm just saying. So yes, the 90s were a weird time for G.I. Joe. They had DEF, Battle Corps, Ninja Force, but that was my G.I. Joe. And let's be real for a second. The 90s carry a lot of blame for, quote, killing G.I. Joe, a real American hero. But have you seen Battle Force 2000? Or Python Patrol? Or Tiger Force? If you like those versions of those characters, there's nothing wrong with that. That's the Joe you like. You know how it feels. I think you can sympathize a little bit. Love them or hate them, the 90s were trying to do something to bring the line back from the edge before it was too late. They had new characters, new tooling, new designs, new figures. Some of them a little outlandish, won't lie to you. Some of them look a little weird. But it was something different. It was something they were trying to keep the line alive. Possibly the line had gone on too long, and it was harder to grab kids' interest with things like Marvel and Power Rangers making huge splashes on the television. And G.I. Joe did try in the 90s with G.I. Joe Extreme and Sergeant Savage, which was basically Captain America, neither of which were especially spectacular. That being said, I do remember Sergeant Savage, and I did like that quite a bit. Sergeant Savage went a little larger, with some kind of weird articulation. I'm guessing the guys who worked on Cops and Crooks were too busy to help them with that articulation? I don't know. And G.I. Joe Extreme went way bigger with significantly less articulation, to basically 5 POA. Which, from what I understand, because I wasn't there, that's what made G.I. Joe so popular in the first place, was all the articulation compared to 5 POA. So, all that is to say, the next time you think of G.I. Joe circa 1990, I hope you can think of them a little bit gentler. They tried to fight the flame from extinguishing, but were too late to the party, and now they unjustly bear the blame. Well, that's all I got for you today. So, if you liked the video, then all that asks is you click like on the video and subscribe to the channel. It's a great way to help me out, and I much appreciate it when you do. And I thank you all for stopping by and spending some time with me today. So until next time, I'm Sal, signing off.
Pardon me, can I just check this out? D+? Oh my God. I pass.